All right. Welcome to our Thursday night book launch, sponsored by Redheaded Stepchild and myself. I am Malika Albrecht, still letting people in the waiting room. I'm really glad that we are all here together, and it's been nice because Chris, you're bringing out a lot of people I haven't seen in ages, and then also the people that I love to see almost weekly. So today we have Chris Abbate here, and we are celebrating his most recent book from FutureCycle Press. Very excited to Words for Flying, to celebrate Words for Flying. I do have the link in there where to purchase it. I'm going to repaste it from Chris and put it in there again, because sometimes people who have arrived later don't get to see it. So hopefully everybody, you can see it in there. Kind of do a thumbs up if you see what I just, the link. That's helpful. Thanks, guys. Chris is fabulous. We get to see him a lot at North Carolina Poetry Society. Of course, most all of that's virtual. We are looking forward to the time that we get to be in person. His poems have appeared in numerous journals, such as Connecticut River Review, Cider Press Review, and Prime Number Magazine. He is two-time nominee for Pushcart Prize and has been nominated for Best of the Net. And I also know North Carolina Poetry Society, you've won awards, and also Nazim Hikmet. So I am not going to talk a lot. I do want to remind everybody, right, that is a hard one for me. I want to remind everybody, if you'd like to do open mic, please send me a message. Currently, what I have is Jonathan, Kieran, Christy, Paul, Ron, Anna, Joan, and Dennis. If I did not get your name and you want to read, please send me a message. All right, I'm turning it over to you, Chris. Everybody, please remember to mute yourself.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here, for joining. It's great to see everybody virtually. And thank you, Malika, for getting this together. I've watched a bunch of your previous readings, and it's great to have this audience. Thank you for giving us this platform. Thank you to Karen as well for your work in organizing this. Hopefully we'll do some in-person readings. I know that I'm planning in-person readings this year, so hopefully I'll hit all the popular spots and we can see everybody and get back together again in person. But this is great. So thank you so much for doing this and for inviting me tonight. My book is called Words for Flying. I just got my copies in the mail yesterday. It's published by FutureCycle Press. And I really like how it came out. One of the nice things is the editor was able to do a nice wrap around here from the front to back cover. So I think if you purchase a hard copy, I think you'll really like the product, and also even the font. I worked with the editor on the font, and it's a sans serif font, so it has a more unique look to it. I think you'll really like it. And also, it's about 70 poems, 100 pages. So I give you a good bang for your buck in this book. So I don't think you'll be disappointed there. And it's also available on Kindle as well. So I will start out with the title poem, Words for Flying. His prayer at takeoff, the man in the seat next to me, the practiced crossing of himself before kissing his thumbnail, reminds me of my childhood mantra, Lord willing, at any mention of the future, a divine safety net, a worn path of petition. The first time I flew as a child, I gripped an armrest with one hand and rosary beads with the other. My brother walked freely up and down the aisle as if we didn't need God to fly. Before touchdown, the man crosses himself again. The wing flaps rise as we brake, reveal braided arteries of hydraulics. Our bodies lurch forward, hover for a moment in our chairs, incidental to gravity and lift, thrust and drag. The man glances at me, relieved. Neither of us has words for flying, and a turbine needs no intercession. More likely, We are the plane's prayer, suspended between body and spirit, ignorance and understanding. How else to explain our tearing through the stratosphere at 600 miles per hour, intentions climbing, soaring, peering over the edges of our lives, then gliding back to earth, barely feeling a thing. So I focus on this theme of flying in the book and some of the poems in the book. And as I was preparing for the reading, I had a hard time selecting just a few poems from the book, but I think what I selected tonight will give you a good idea of how I write, my tone, my subject matter. The other theme seems like cover in this book is falling. So there's this, I think, this idea of suspension, this sense of vulnerability that's important, I think, in poetry, and something that I try to incorporate into my own poetry. And this next poem is about basketball, partly. And I remember driving from Hartford, where I'm from, in Connecticut, to Boston to see a Celtics game with my friend. And I had found I saw on the back of a newspaper, this was before the internet, that you can buy this book where you will learn how to dunk. And I showed my friend, I said, I'm going to be able to dunk, however tall I was at that point, probably 5'6" or something. And he said, no way. This poem is called Learning to Dunk. I guaranteed my friend I'd do it within a year. I must have been feeling my oats, as my parents said, or flirting with the deadly sin of pride, as my teachers warned. But wasn't that the point? To defy my natural boundaries, to crack the secret domain of God, the hallowed air of the 10-foot-high rim. A boy is nothing unless he is functional, a man in training who can run and lift and jump. For years, as if on instinct, I had been grazing ceiling tiles with my fingertips, slapping door lintels with my palms. I began to lose interest in basketball the first time I fell in love. Funny, this falling I embraced, the inverse of pride, the ground taken out from under me. But even this felt like flying, the only dream I can remember, the one where I propel myself over treetops simply by kicking my feet. Today, I resisted the urge to jump and touch an exit sign. I recalled the boy I lost, still learning to dunk, still hoping to fall. I write a lot about my experiences in my life. Most of the poems in this book are first person experiences. Some poems are conceptual, but most of them are based on real life events. And this next poem is when I was 10 years old, my parents, who one of the many hundreds of acts of kindness that they performed, they took in my father's uncle, who had no one to take care of him. And this Uncle Jerry, he was born with a curved spine. So he was only about a little over 4 feet tall. And he lived with us for about 8 years until he died one night unexpectedly in his sleep. But Uncle Jerry, a couple things about Uncle Jerry. Actually, I brought a visual aid. That's okay. That's Uncle Jerry. I was reading his newspapers. A couple of things about Uncle Jerry. He loved cigars. He smoked 2 cigars a day. And he loved to read the newspaper from front to back every day, the Hartford Courant. So this poem is for Jerry. It's called Uncle Jerry for Gerald Rago. The day before you died, I tickled you. I thought you needed cheering up. After 8 years of living with my family, you dreaded having to go to a nursing home. I charted my teenage growth spurts against your 4-foot frame, the hump along your upper back like a question mark, your deformity, a public curiosity. You made me feel bigger than I was, but isn't that what boyhood is about? To someday stake one's place among the monoliths of men? I helped you undress after your arms had lost their range and climbed into the shower in my bathing suit to wash the parts you couldn't reach, the soft parts I imagined once held muscle and form. I remember the summer we took you on a family trip to Maine. You sat in the kitchenette one night and sobbed because at 75, you had never been on vacation. We were told Jesus said that whatever we do to the least of us, we do to him. But how were we to know you were the Jesus we had been looking for? That for every year you were shunned, you collected a cup and were finally filling one of them with rain.
Wow.
Ode to a Couch. A neighbor and I drag you down 2 flights of stairs, grunt against your heft, a dying animal to be euthanized. We turn your rigid body gently around corners, as if not to hurt you, as if you could feel pain. Set along the curb, you look displaced, beige floral pattern against oil-spotted asphalt, no longer defined by the things that once surrounded you, no longer a haven for Sunday afternoon naps and late-night TV shows. When you were new, I wicked the slightest drop of water that fell on you, fluffed your cushions every night, as if apologizing for laying the weight of my body on you so shamelessly. We are careful at first with those we love, the cautious dance, the asking permission, then reaching the stage of familiarity, tolerating the other's idiosyncrasies. I wish I could love the way a couch loves, to be unconditionally inviting, nothing but giving, and to be loved back, despite my shortcomings, my loose threads and creaking frame, my flattened edges. Well, I know one person on this who's attending this reading was here at this next poem. Every year, Holly Springs holds a book fair, and I did a workshop, a poetry workshop as part of this. And then afterwards, they give you a spot at a table to sell your books at a book fair. And I stepped away from my table for a minute. And when I came back, my friend next to me said, "Hey, someone came by and took a book of yours without paying." I said, "That's all right. They'll come back and pay, I'm sure." Well, they never came back. So I thought, I got to write this person a poem. So this is called To the Man Who Stole My Book at a Book Fair. What would you risk for poetry? Your clandestine hand, your slippery fingers. I wonder if you are more courageous for stealing than I am for writing, or if I should be flattered by your boldness. In Afghanistan, women write subversive two-line poems called landis, Pashto word for short, poisonous snakes. An Afghan woman, Zarmina, burned herself alive after her brothers beat her for having written them. Perhaps the writing instructor who told me there was no such thing as an original idea was right. These poems were never mine to begin with. They were just thoughts that simmered while mowing the lawn or vacuuming, footprints from the back and forth of a day. Think of them as an arrangement of mental furniture, a room I have reserved for you to toss your worries over the back of a chair and to sit for an afternoon. Or think of them as a match cast to your presumptions. When your fingertips skim those pages, may you feel ever so slightly what it is to burn.
Wow.
Isn't that what we all want? The reader's fingers to burn a little bit. When I was, before the pandemic forced me to work from home for the last 2 years, prior to that, when I drove from where I live here in Holly Springs, North Carolina, to Morrisville, North Carolina, about 20 miles away, I would notice vanity plates. And I cannot help but notice vanity plates. So after a while, I said, why don't I maybe collect the names of some of these plates and write a poem. And I had collected about 75 or 100 plates that I would just voice mail to myself. And I sat down to write this poem, and I couldn't include all the plates. And even now I'll find plates that I feel like, I wish I had put that in the poem because I hadn't seen it before. But I narrowed it down to the plates in this poem. And it gave some personality to the cold metal exterior of our cars. This personality seemed to be shouting at you with these vanity plates. So what I'll do to indicate that I'm referencing a vanity plate is I'll raise my finger so that you know, because you won't be able to see it on the page. Vanity plates. They are the go-getters. Mom 26.2 and just do it, while the rest of us just go. They are into having fun and see the cup full, and they live for love, while we are only living for the weekend. They are the stoplight philosophers who ask, do you exist? And like good parents, they assure us, I heard you, now go to sleep. They make us wish we had enough faith to plaster Soli Deo or Jesus will across our backsides. Don't fuss, be grateful, they remind us. And despite the drain of morning traffic, they see to be happy and say, it's okay to laugh. They claim to be the ringleader, declare, I'm too much, and boast, too late, I won, to those of us who are content to remain nameless, who cluster in the field chewing grass all day, amused enough to decipher their identities in the space of 8 characters, noticing how, despite their eccentricities, they are all heading in the same direction, following each other along. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I have one more poem that I'll read. And over the last couple of years, I was writing poems about my dog, Lewis, another visual aid. Lewis is a Papillon. And Lewis and I have walked thousands of miles together, thousands. He has peed in every square foot of this neighborhood. And I've connected with him in a different way. Something about his presence, his aura, his essence has hit me. And so I wrote 4 different poems. And I thought, when I was putting the manuscript together for this book, I thought, well, I should probably only put one of the dog poems because I don't want to be redundant. And then I thought, well, why not put all 4 in? And why not call them canine studies? So that's what I did. They're spread throughout the book. There are 4 of them, Canine Study 1 through 4. And I'm going to read the 3rd one. And I reference the psychiatrist Carl Jung, who talked about the idea of the self as the psyche, as opposed to the ego. And I reference that in this poem too. Canine Study number 3, 2 bulbs. It could take my lifetime to understand him, how there is no distinction between who he is and what he does. Meanwhile, I am returning to the self which Jung spoke of. For all I know, we are vials of energy, 2 bulbs. As each evening, he stops me outside to sit on the steps. And I think how there are more stars than grains of sand on earth. 10 times my grandparents spun dust into light. Tonight, I fathom 1 star, contemplate this dog. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That was fabulous.
bro.
I'm so glad you read one of the canine studies. Y'all can unmute. We can all be together. Yeah, I love Lewis.
Thank you, Lewis.
Nice job, bro.
Oh my goodness.
Beautiful.
That was so good.
Very nice.
Oh,
Yeah, that was lovely. And I want to open it up to questions. There's a lot of beautiful comments and compliments that I will send to you, but I'm looking for questions right now. I love that you talked about your process. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about that, if you would talk about it.
My process for writing or putting the book together?
Let's start with
Sorry.
writing, but I also do want, yeah, Karen's going yes to both of those.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Process for writing. That's hard. I read a lot. So I'm in a poetry book club, and we read a book for the last 10 years, we read a book about every month or 2. So, I work as a programmer, SAS programmer, and a database programmer for clinical drug trials. So that doesn't really it lends itself to creativity, but not necessarily to poetry. So I live in these 2 different worlds, of a technical world and then a more creative world. But I always approach my poetry, I think I have a technical approach to my poetry. It's very deliberate. Anything I write with the intention of getting it published or putting it in a book. I do not really write a lot of extraneous stuff. I have tons hundreds of fragments of poems and drafts, and I keep those in a drafts folder. So whenever I sit down to write, usually it's always at night, I will look at what I want to work on, and then I'm thinking of, and then as I get more and more poems written, I think of what I want to focus on, maybe for the theme of a collection, right? So I have the luxury of doing that because I've collected so many thoughts and fragments over time. Once I have a draft and I've gone through maybe about 5 or so iterations of that, I'll send it off to different people who will give me feedback, people in my critique groups and living poetry, people outside of living poetry who've given me feedback. And then I'll let the poem sit for a while. I'll let the feedback sit. I have 3 drafts sitting in my desk right now that just been sitting there for about a month. I really have no desire to go back to them because I need to remove myself from the emotion of the poem. So I approach it very technically. It needs to hit all the marks for me. If it doesn't, then I won't even send it to somebody. Or maybe if I do send it to someone, it doesn't go anywhere after that. But most of my poems, I will just I'll jump into full throttle and make sure that I've worked and worked and worked at it to make sure it's good and it's readable. And then finally, I read it out loud too. I need to hear how it sounds. So some poems, they're a little bit more difficult to read, but they have to fit my voice. So for all of us who write poetry out there, read your poems aloud. Preparing for this reading, I spent hours preparing for this reading just to hear myself, how I'm going to say a certain word. And I still could change, but I need it to fit my voice too.
It's fascinating.
And I want the voice to be consistent too throughout the book. That's the other thing. I need the voice to be consistent throughout the book.
Somebody had written in here, how do you negotiate these 2 worlds? And it's almost to me like you're allowing the 2 worlds to kind of inform each other with what you do for a living and with your art, with poetry. I think the technical mastery or the exacting nature of how you approach poetry really shows up in your poems. So that's lovely, that sense of going over and over, and that you have a Rubik's almost in your head of what you want in the end. Thank you for talking about that. And then Karen, did you want to hear about the book too? Yes. How did you order the book?
That was fun. It didn't take me that long, really. I mean, I knew I was going to have about 60 to 70 poems. Of course, I threw some in afterwards that were newer poems, and but I just went up to a room, a bonus room I have, and I just put all the poems out on the floor, and I just started ordering them into groups, and then I just played with that. So it's hard to write a book that follows a common theme. And, I mean, you try as much as you can to thread that theme through the book. And I do that with this book. I've never written a book that's cohesive. All the poems, are cohesive in matching the theme. But I bookended the book with poems about flying. The first one's Words for Flying, and the last one is Enjoy Your Flight. And then there's some in the middle about flying and falling and stuff like that. So that's fun. I love that. It's so cool to just see all your poems out there. Just you need to see them physically. You cannot do this in a Word document or on a screen. You just can't. You have to put them all out. So once you have about 50 and I've published half of them, say this book, I published over half of them, or they've received some award or recognition. Once I know I've done that, then I'm saying, okay, let's do it. Let's go for the book. And when I submitted this just to a few places. Thankfully, it didn't take me very long. When I submitted this to FutureCycle Press, they got back to me in 2 weeks. Nice. So, and then of course I had to wait, a year for my turn in the queue. But I didn't have to wait that long. I didn't have to do that much work as far as marketing. So I was very, very lucky.
I love hearing about your process, and a lot of people, the only thing better than Chris Abbate Poems is Chris Abbate the person. Is Chris the person? Joan wrote, I like the idea of a poem fitting your voice. Jenna was saying, I read out loud. It's a must for me. I think I've not missed any questions. So if I have missed something, please let me know. Joan, you said it's a puzzle, kind of how he was describing putting the book together.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like a puzzle. But you know, with my last book, Talk About God, it was published by Main Street Rag. I try to follow a chronology of my life. So I started with the day my parents met, and I ended more towards adulthood and a kind of a more awareness, like a spiritually aware poem. And that was the kind of the theme of that book.
Yeah.
This book, it doesn't follow that chronology like that, like the previous book did, but it definitely does. It definitely, when people read a book, you know, they say when they read a book of poetry, they jump around, which is fine. But just know that I think for all of us, we have an intentional order of poems so that, you know, but, you know, hey, read it however you want. You read it, it's good enough for me. But there is an order, though. It doesn't follow a logical sequence.
Very true. Very true. Well, it has been just such a joy to hear you read from this book. And I love the visual aids, Uncle Jerry and Lewis. That was fabulous. Yeah. That was awesome. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Mauro said it's like listening to a great album. The order matters. Yeah. Very true.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I have a
Chris?
question.
Yes, jump in.
Chris, you said that you look at your poems and look for a consistency in your voice, your author voice, right? So it's the author voice and the voice inside the poem can be different, right? I was wondering if you ever feel a pull to kind of go outside that voice, you know,
Yeah.
and write something in another persona or something like that.
Yeah, I think some of them are in that other voice, like what you're talking about. I think that's, I don't know, like if that's hard, I think, to write in a different persona, but I think it's definitely good. Because that's really the good thing about reading different kinds of poetry. I read all kinds of stuff, and I'm always reading poetry. I'm reading, this is what I'm reading right now, Repair by C.K. Williams. I read everything. So I think the more voices you can be exposed to, just like the more people you are exposed to and the more experiences you are exposed to, it helps you to learn about who you are and what your voice is, right? What your limitations are, what you can and cannot do, say, what you can and cannot get away with, either verbally out in the world or in poetry. And you know when it's, you know when it sounds good, when it sounds believable, and there are times when it doesn't. There are times when my poems are too romantic, say they get too caught up, like they're too emotional, and I have to. That's not going to cut it. You know, that has to be tempered. Something has to change, because it's not going to fly if it's too emotional. And that's a lot of times, those are our first thoughts.
Yeah. Our
first thoughts are not these deep poetic thoughts, and not that a poem has to have deep poetic thoughts, but it doesn't have a lot of times the first draft will not have that dimension and will not shift, will not make those really important shifts, so that the reader you can take the reader through a sequence of events or a sequence of emotions, which is important, and make sure they're ending in a more clear place. Like for me, I want to make sure the reader trusts my voice, and that they can, and that I let them down, not that I want to let them down gently, but that they can make sense of the poem from beginning to end. I want to make sure that it ties together. So if my voice helps that, if being true to whatever my voice is helps that, then that's what I want to make sure I do. But you're right, though. I mean, it's so important to try out different voices and seeing what you can do. I think it's great. I think the more we write, the closer we get to that, and which is great.
I was thinking about the role of authenticity, you know, in your work is very much there. I mean, you can feel that, and that's
Yeah.
ultimately what you're talking about. So thank you. Okay. Karen wanted to know, what journals are you loving these days?
Geez. Well, I'll usually find out about these journals when I'm marketing, right? So one journal I really like is called The Under Review. They published that poem, Learning to Dunk. They published another poem of mine called Driving Range, about hitting golf balls at a driving range. I've been playing golf for a long time. And I wrote a poem, and it's in this book. They published those two poems. And they're a sports related journal, and it's very good writing. I mean, it's really good. People write short stories and poetry, and it's called The Under Review. They're based in Minnesota. The editors are very nice. They're very personable. What else do I read? I read the journals I've been published in. There's also South Florida Poetry Journal, SoFlo Pojo, I think they go by. I read anything online. There are so many journals to read online. It's incredible, isn't it? It really is almost difficult to just filter out all these journals and go through all of them. But Comstock Review is very popular. I have to think of some other ones that I go to. But I read Poetry Daily. Usually I go there to read the latest poem. But yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
Awesome. Joan, you had a question about that, or you just had the comment, I've never heard a poet say they write deliberately to publish? Interesting.
Just the comment.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I my day is taken up with work, really, work, exercise, eating, walking my dog,
Yeah.
you know, just basic stuff. And it really doesn't leave me much time to write. So when I do write, it's very intentional. It's got to be something I really want to write about. The other thing too is I don't write therapeutic poetry, but my poetry is therapeutic, right? So I'm reconciling a feeling. I'm able. It's fantastic because it gives us the opportunity to dig into our past, to dig into the things that make us unique, and if we're really being honest and vulnerable, to go to those places and to reconcile those experiences. So for me, it's such an awesome opportunity. When I finish a poem and I feel like it's done, and it's whatever certain subject about Uncle Jerry say, or something about my dog, or whatever the experience would be. There's tons of experiences in this book that I go through, and each one of them is a sense of reconciliation, of fulfillment. Once it's done, I can then say, yeah, I've pretty much captured that. And the only way I can do it that I know how is through poetry.
There's a fascinating mix of authenticity and then focus, and then you know, really a wonderful way of approaching poetry that's kind of cool to hear about. That's awesome. Thank you, Chris, for and the self-awareness. I think that's the other thing, that you know exactly what themes you're working with. I mean, it's fascinating to hear you talk about. So thank you. Well, if there's no more questions, if we want to take a moment to again thank you, Chris, for reading to us, and it's fabulous to celebrate.
Thank you, everybody.
Just a reminder that I did put the
Okay.
link to the book in the chat section. If somebody wanted to get a signed copy, are you doing that?
Of course, you can email me at chrisabbate@yahoo.com. I'll be happy to mail you a copy, a signed copy, or if you want to mail me your copy, I can sign it and mail it back to you. Or if I see you at some point in a reading, I'll happily sign a copy for you. So yeah, my website also is chrisabbate.com. And there's links there, and there's a few sample poems. But the book is available through
Amazon.
the link that Malika posted there, and on my web that's available. The link is there on my website as well, and it's available in paperback and Kindle through Amazon.
Right.
That's where FutureCycle Press publishes through.
I'll go ahead and
Prints through.
do the link again so that people can access it. And we're going to move to open mic. Thank you, Chris. I
you,
have
guys.
quite a few people. So when you talk, just go ahead and say something and that'll spotlight you. My first person is Jonathan. So if you could say something, that would help. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Hello, folks.
All yours.
Cool. It's just like I'm watching myself. I just wanted to read this poem and get out of the way. Okay. This poem I wrote a while ago is called It's Complicated. Chris for his fantastic poetry. I can relate to a lot of stuff that he was saying about getting out loud, voice in your head, and how we don't write therapeutically, but the poem actually ends up being therapeutic. I find that the same thing for me. So, but this piece is called It's Complicated. Actually, it's called It's Complicated. It's about me. A normal me is normally a novelty. Pen nozzle pens novels, and among men, I'm a novel anomaly. My lines model Muhammad Ali. I mean, how many can spin a homily economy? In an icon in a context anatomy, you'll see it's not even nominally anonymous. It's not a nod to me, it's a nod to us. I take words stuck in monotony and make them monogamous. From the knot in my guts to my esophagus, they present the placenta to pen a script synonymous with my pen name. The hip eponymous flame that came from the jaws that flow like a water horse. My voice is not even a quarter horse. I'm a cross between a thoroughbred and a quarter horse. It's like Henry Thoroughlead and taught a course of thoroughlead toward the force. Now you can burrow heads and ignore the force of words. That's like Luke Kang and Luke Cage on Luke's page. But when I come across a loose phrase, it's like I change loose change into loot on the loose leaf. Sometimes I lose sleep trying to lube sheets with lead and ink, but when I let in ink, it's like I'm scribbling, riddling. Mostly fair to middling ever since I was a little, and I've had a flair for scribbling riddles. And whenever I was just piddling, it could drop some lyrical skittles in. No one would quibble whenever I slid a little in. Not even a little lid on my pen's fiddling. When I script, I feel like I hit a pitch middle in. Till I'm dead, I'll be meddling with lead. Feels like a metal wind. Growing up, it never seemed I met a win. Life seemed so menacing, so I would spin metaphors as my medicine. Then I met a man who said if I meditate on him, I could medicate my sin. He didn't force this metamorphosis or change course because of my melanin. He was a felon in that he stole me from the hell I'm in. Gave me his name, and now I spell amen and wonder what kind of spell I'm under, because frequently when God speaks with me, it's all Greek to me. The alpha and omega made me an alpha male over the alphabet. I don't act like an alpha yet. I'm about as calm as an alpha gets. I'm a beta, Max, like a beta fish. The bait and witch will give you fits like beta testing a bait and switch. He created this, a guy whose creative wit is his greatest gift. Pen drips, G-rated scripts, born with life's serrated tips, G-rated it. I bleed while every he and she graded it because I feel the need to be great at it. I'm a great addict who ingratiates my great to migrate my mind to these lines, or rewind. I want to integrate my inner great to interfere with your inner ear. But my inner fear is that I have sweet nothings to drop in her ears because I'm a sinner who's in arrears. Hide inner tears so I can appear as Mr. Logical. Worship a God many dismiss as mythological. Made a mess of many a miss when I attempted to mix the logical with misillogical. And I'd be remiss if I didn't admit that many of you, many a miss, illogical, admit that the mix of many a misfits, Smith, for logical. I have mixed with many a misfit. A nitwit who's missed with many a miss that I mess with. It's hard to sit with the thoughts of the many misses I try to fit with, so I try to fit with even a tidbit about the ones I tried to get with. I kissed the lip quick, but wanted more than lipstick. I want to kick it with Kismet. I want someone to kiss and have kids with. Someone to watch it with, has a quick wit and makes my heart beat like a drum kit on Fitbit. Loves my big pictures and a fixture with scriptures. This mixture will help make sure to help rewrite my life, even if it has a bad script. Or if I'm pretty crazy like Brad Pitt on a bad trip. Cryptic to the crypt, to many I'm a bad fit. Too many bad picks where I had to beat it. I can play that. and the bad riff. It's as if I've been inhaling Van Halen, got high on Steve Vai, and got to get a fix from Hendrix. I'm a mix of Prince licks and pen drips. A poetic appendix. My appendage is a fender bender like a car crash. My art slash the scripts of Homer. Manuscript owner. Riff like the cliffs of Dover. Equipped with quips that smolder from the page's title. Jimmy Page is my idol. If you could take your pen and Jimmy Page is like I do, you drive yourself crazy. I'm a guitar overdrive meets Jay-Z. I'm the tall, sober guy meets crazy. My loose leaf sheet's crazy, but that's what my pen produced. But when I'm introduced formally, you'll see that a normal me is normally a novelty. I know it's odd to see and odd to hear and odd to see through a prodigy's pen progeny, but I tried with God prodding me, and he pardoned me to free the God in me, while jotting with the fantasy that while I'm lauding thee, he's applauding me. Plotting that the life allotted me is the lottery you pause to see. The pottery that I long to be belongs to me like an apostrophe followed me. When apostasy made me a broken vessel, God epoxied me. When God proxied me approximately 20 centuries ago. And if you don't central me, you'll know that this is the basis of my life, the voice of the many faces of my life, the choice that brings homeostasis to my life. And no matter how hard the race is through my life, or just how many phrases brand my life, my Christ is my oasis and my life. So this is my life, at least my life so far, my Lord, my lyrics, my loves, my guitar. And though it gets hard, I'll never get tired of spilling my guts where my gifts are. Sift through my heart and shift bars to where my wrists are, not to be a big star, but so this bizarre rock star can see how far this pen gets tomorrow. I want to control verse like Kendrick Lamar, right? So my pen lifts the bar over their heads. One of the joys in life is to script flows and hatch my words while others stand on their tiptoes to catch my words going over their heads. Thank you.
Fabulous. I'm going to read the quote from Karen because I think a lot of us are feeling this. She wrote, "Jonathan, I am swimming in this poem. It's so delightful. My face hurts from smiling so hard."
That's pretty cool. Thank you.
And Karen, I'm actually coming to you, so go ahead and unmute.
Yes. Well, won't this be anticlimactic? Jonathan, that was, oh my God, that was amazing. Okay. I'm glad I got a short one here tonight. So this is a collage poem. It was really fun to write. International Women's Writing Guild. Lisa St. John did a workshop on collage poems, and she read 3 poems during the workshop. One was Kim Adonicio's, one was Joey Harjo's, one was Margaret Atwood's. They had nothing to do with each other. And she just said, just jot down little phrases or whatever strikes you as I read these poems. And then she finished and she said, okay, let's go 5 minutes and everybody write a poem. And everybody did. It was amazing. Anyway, I'm not talking about mine in particular, but everybody else's was amazing. But this is what I got. So my poem is, it's actually phrases word for word from the 3 poems. And it made me happy. So here we go. At this table, we gossip. To confirm your worst fears about me, look in the mirror. We gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. We chase chickens or dogs away. We pray of suffering and remorse. All those keys glittering in the window, we must eat to live. How pretty, how striking. We are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite they bury me in.
Oh, that's fabulous. It is awesome. It's amazing. A collage poem. Thank you, Karen.
Very fun to do. Yeah.
I love the combination of those 3 together too. Yeah, so much fun. Christy, I'm heading towards you. If you could unmute.
A minute, I'm having, okay, can you hear me now?
You're good.
Okay, I'm having technical difficulties over here. I'm going to try something and see if I can pull this up on my screen so I can see tonight. This is the most Southern thing I've ever written. This is what I thought was what I was wanting to leave when I left home, but I think this is what I took with me. So here we go. And Karen asked me to read this tonight. Praise the scavenger hunt. I found white sand whose black underbelly hides in the ink of my tattooed right ankle. Live hose pipes sneaking around corners, trailing between treasure hunts and dining chair forts, reinforced with Oreos and homemade magic. Wood carved back scratchers and crank turn ice cream churns. Grapevines and clotheslines witnessing fried bologna sandwiches, picnicking with Duke's mayonnaise under the apple tree. Dry roast salted peanuts begging to be sipped from a glass bottle baby Coke. Backdoor flip-flops fighting to free themselves from corn silks still dogging their heels. Fatback collard greens and cast iron skillet cornbread lures baiting Santa's bounty far better than any kitchen concocted cookie ever could. Shoeboxes busting at the seams with used to coulds, do whats, and oh my souls. Countertops inundated with deep fried door-stopping crazy Christian casseroles, seasoned with Jesus is watching you, and don't forget bedtime prayers. Washed down with don't think you can talk to him desserts. Half full jars of grandma's molasses, waging war against Motown melodies, oozing along the outer edges of a Percy Sledge groove, an arsenal aimed at keeping them knees stuck together. Fires I started with a dead level stare and the still smoldering ashes spit from my tongue. Shattered mirrors that cut me loose from the views, from the singular view feminine elders used to frame me. Praise the needle and thread that patched these pieces of being. Blessed be the quilt that steals my soul. Thank you.
Yay. Oh, thank you. That's awesome. Marty would be so happy.
I hope so.
I know he would be. People, so make sure that once you've read a poem, go in there and check the chat sections because people are writing some really lovely comments. I'm heading towards Paul. I think I found you. There we go.
Okay, I can say that. This is called Traces of a Portrait of Che Guevara on a Wall in Oaxaca. All that is left of Che are his radical eyes. Weather and other graffiti took his beret, but left its red star newly tattooed on the thigh of a marching, nearly nude but clearly angry teacher on strike. Che's eyes are supportive, averted, and the kind of kindness our better elders show towards the casual way their youngers treat their brief moments of beauty and power and grace. The marchers on the wall are so tall, so certain, so committed. Che sees that he's fine without hair or nose or lips. He's happy with what he sees. Their large homemade signs, their leaderless unity, their hard-won solidarity. Che had gone alone. He had held the wall for so long, setting the pace for revolutions. Now he has begun to vanish. Still his stare sustains his power without his face.
Oh, Paul, thank you. Oh, yeah, people are in the back. Yes. And Channa, did you have a question? That is Paul's most recent book. Somebody said really love the cover in the back.
Thank you. That's, yeah, the poems from the book, Something Wonderful, is from Red Hawk. And there are multiple ways to get it, which I hope you'll see there. If you go to smalljones.com, which I'll put in, you can get there. And I hope other people will put their book addresses.
Thank you. That's a great idea, Paul. So anybody that's, has a book out, a new book out, or just wants to put it in there, put it in the chat section. That'd be fabulous. Ron, I am coming to you. It's been so good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I screwed up my screen and I'm trying to get it back down to
want me
size
to come-
here.
If you want me to come back, I can come back to you if that would help.
Yeah, I made it full screen and I can't get it back to like, so I can see my document to read from. So go
No
to somebody
worries.
else.
I'll
And
circle back around. Let's see, I've got Anna next. If you could say something that would help.
Hi,
Okay,
did that come through?
that helped. That's what I needed.
Okay.
Come back through.
Let me find my file. Okay, so back in December, I read an article online about a volcanic eruption on the island of La Palma. And there was this picture with it that showed the mounds of ash covering up a house. The poem is called La Palma. 10 days after the lava stopped and the authorities declared it over, they should have said, for now. On the news, a photo. A house inhumed under a fresh black dune, chimney raising a weak objection to the soft curves of this dark alien landscape, and the gable with its blue window gazing into the camera, clear-eyed and witnessing. This is how it ends. All our sharp edges obscured, everything muffled, everything quiet. At last, we may praise the relief that comes from knowing, like a patient ill for years, fraught by uncertainty, finally receiving her diagnosis. So I say unto you who hear, let us rejoice. For no longer must we rely on faith. Our deities are answering, all of them in unison, delivering on the promises made on their behalf by every scripture, every prophet, every robed intercessor, and we have the photos to prove it. Each one signed by some divine hand, God or goddess of volcano, wind, firestorm, tidal wave. Today, they came for La Palma. Soon enough, the rest. Soon enough, all our imaginary lines, nation, city, plat, so carefully drawn, will be blurred by ash, erased by water, quelling the fight in us for good. So let us praise while we still can, the hush to come when the last quarrel lulls, the last angry eye closes, and the silence settles, as after a mother reads the final page of a story to a son warm in his bed and closes the book softly. Let us give thanks for the answer, not just foreshadowed, but announced, broadcast, arrived. Here, my children, is the peace you've been praying for.
Thank you so much. Anna, people were writing some comments, praise the relief that comes from knowing. There's quite a few in there. Thank you so very much.
Sorry, it was a little dark.
I'd never be apologetic. Yeah. Joan, I've just had you and now, oh, there you are. I was gonna say I had you and then I lost you.
Here I am. I just received my second book, Carrying Claire, in the mail today, and there's nothing like opening that box. So I thought I would read the next to last poem in the book. And it's very short. Wedding Day. Our darling, splendid as a swan, resplendent in her white, is buoyed by joy, as all here are joyous. The lovers' lives bind. I see Claire's new life start, I, who first felt it stir.
Thank you, Joan. Will you, just like Paul did, will you put your book, how people could order it in the chat section? I'm headed towards Dennis. If you could say something and help me find you, that would be great. I found you. Go ahead and unmute.
I'm trying. There you go.
I think.
Hello. Okay, I'm going to stick with Chris's theme and read a poem that I wrote a long time ago. when I was in the Navy. I used to fly home on occasion. And Sundays flying back was kind of crazy. And this is one morning on a flight back from Cincinnati to Charleston, South Carolina. It's called Row 34 Window. A handful of people huddled together on the observation deck, just cold figures surrounded by the rising sun. Sunday mornings were meant to be something more than a plane ride to Charleston. Last night there was you. Today, there's the sun in my eyes as I watch the people watching me, but I'm just a figure in a window of row 34. I wonder how many times I've sat here. I think I should keep a journal today, January 16th, row 34, window. But last night there was you. If it wasn't so early, I'd get a bourbon and Coke, but I'll settle for a hot coffee. It's not as warm as it was last night, but last night there was you. Even the river says it's cold as the steam rises to meet the morning air. It's a clear day at 42 minutes to Chattanooga, and I can't even pick up a phone to tell you I love you. And the sun hasn't come up enough to drop our shadow to the ground. It's just another Sunday. But last night there was you, and you were mine. And today I remember you're the reason for row 34 window.
Oh, thank you so very much. I like that love poem. I am coming to you, Laura. I found you. Go ahead and unmute.
Hello, everyone. I really have two poems. I was going to read a shorter one, but I'll play with this new one. It's called Cuts Like a Knife. The clumsy butcher's knife, too dull, saws into the ham's baby pink flesh, hits bone, shoots to the left like a bullet ricocheting off the sheriff's badge in a bad spaghetti western. It slices a gash into her forefinger, and then there's that cold chill that precedes, sweat, flushing, like that time you dared yourself to ask out Steve, hottest guy in junior year. The rejection, humiliation that sliced through like a butcher's knife beating bone. The pain, different, but the humiliation of choosing the wrong tool is much like choosing the wrong moment, and the scars are still there.
Oh, girl. Thank you. That's awesome. And that was a very physical, visceral poem. Oh, wow. You guys are really bringing it tonight. Ron, I can come back to you now if that works.
I am good. Yes.
Right.
So I write mostly short stories, and after I finished my MFA in summer of 2020, I just the air went out of me like a balloon, and I couldn't write anything. So I took a workshop in January, and they had us write some essays and poems. It's kind of like, doing other stuff to kind of get back to the thing that you do mainly. So this is one of those poems that I wrote. We were asked to write about a place we've never been, a part of the world that we've never been. And I never traveled in the West, in the desert areas that had mesas and buttes just kind of popping out of the desert floor. And that always had appeal to me from like cowboy movies when I was a kid and all. So I wrote a poem about that. It's called Kiting the Butte. Kiting the Butte. That child ran the flat top happy, wheeled out cord like a trout man till the rainbow flapped so far upstream he could barely spot a whitecap, and only when the sun slicked it just right. And his quiet family ate on into the bone-dry afternoon underneath the shade they'd sailed. Put some pickle on it, please. And the kite raptured from the dead flat butte snapped up the sky, raked the air like an eagle, and spanked the wind like a bat. A Spitfire was what it was, pulled its pilot up, up and away, then let his body slip loose and hauled his mortal coil up hard. Busy-eyed monkey men combed those crags for weeks, slid cabras and sent hounds into dim hollows where only sleek, creepy crawlers ought to go. And the silent picnickers ate on and on into the parching afternoon in the shadow of the shade they'd made. Past the Bordeaux, said the father. And look up, always up, he'd said to his son down on the lone prairie, which is just the way the child stuck with it as the cord unspooled. And still, the placid picnickers ate on and on and on into the glaring afternoon, settled in the sunless blind they'd built. Who saved room for plum crumble? And the kite and coil reeled each other in, flickered just inside the thin blue line, and Earth, turning from the kitchen sink and rubbing lotion on her hands, choired upstairs and down in her chirpy tones. You came home early, little rainbow.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. That is fabulous. I'm so glad that you got inspired and wrote a poem and shared it with us. That's
I've got
fabulous. And Laura, the language was wonderful. And Laura was saying, yeah, such great music is what Anna said. There's some comments in there. I'll let you read them because we're running over.
Oh,
So I'm going
thank
to
you.
go to
Yep.
Maro. If you could say
Hey.
something. Oh, fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the read, Chris. It was wonderful. I would have said encore, but that would have been great. I work as a mental health care provider. I have for years, and I don't write too many poems about patients, but this was an instance recently that really humbled me and inspired this one. I've watched people die, but never like this. The mind a dandelion blowing away one pappus at a time from this bipolar Baptist preacher who once tried to bowl me over with his paternalistic wit and religious know-how. Always how the immoral world was coming to an end and the one leader who could make it great again. I admit those meetings were a matter of grit your teeth, await the moment I could write his lithium script and kick him down to his next victim. He would always ask, "Are you a sports person?" And I would always say no. He would look a little disappointed, as though he'd stepped in a puddle, as though his coffee had turned cold, as though he was my father and I was still me. I assumed in him the forgetfulness of someone used to speaking much and listening little. I didn't know that he was losing his map and kept touching the same milestones because he knew no other way. He couldn't hold my words any more than I could believe his Bible, watch his news channel without wanting to scratch my eyes out. In my life, I've had good reason to avoid men like him, drunk on something, hiding their egos in the divine. But he says less and less, abridging our visits. The wife asks if they can wait a year to return, and I assent with gratitude and dread, this time not for seeing him again, but in what I will see then, knowing the time will come when I will be the one speaking too much to no one who wants to listen.
Woo. Wonderful. This is awesome. We're already, and I just want to let people know, I know we're running over, but I'd like to keep going. Hided their egos in the divine. There's a couple comments, Mara, so don't miss those. Amy, I am headed your way. So if you could say something and I will find you.
Hi there.
There we go. Thank you. That helps.
So I've been working on a series of poems about school days, and they're performance poems. I think I'm just experimenting. I probably won't measure up to Jonathan, but let me know what y'all think. This one is advanced math. It doesn't add up, Buttercup. Numbers I get, but not the alphabet added to my math problems. I can't solve them if you involve ABC with 1, 2, 3. I'll disagree, get even, achieve retribution, involution, no solution here. Hear my plea or I'll flee. Break free. I'll respond by absconding with your chalk. I'll balk, run, not walk. Don't gawk or mock me. You're one to talk. You have variable values. According to my calculations, accounting for the frustration of inflation, deflation, in rotation, logically, this equation, with libation added, should balance, a challenge I accept. Leaving the remainder detained, I'll maintain, I'll abstain from the negative. I won't brood, I'll exude the positive instead, tread lightly around the probability of error. In theory, I'm weary. I'll formulate, propagate, differentiate, calculate the net debt, don't fret, no sweat, that's gross up close. I diagnose, engrossed in the probability of my ability, not futility, the credibility of liability, agility required to surmount, account for the amount of linear thinking without driven drinking. This requires a ratio of desire mixed with skimpy attire equals a miscalculation. More libation, please. Improper fractions, divide, misguide, applied notation, inflation, frustration, negation in attitude. No platitudes, we're off on a tangent, no symmetry in identity, irrational fears, switch gears, numbers in arrears. Explore new frontiers, new sectors, vectors. Don't hector the messenger, no assault, it's not his fault. No third-degree crime spree, the figures agree, there's balance. Formulas coincide with probability, stability, virility, flexibility, factor in the median net asset, beget new terms to confirm range of motion, the notion of infinite devotion, a commotion with only one possible outcome. A humdrum sum of parts leads to flowcharts with only odds and ends remaining. So the odds are not in my favor. I see your nods, your false facades, feel your prods as I plod toward a solution, no substitution. Figure in a revolution to equate unit weight, figure 8 with nice curves. Conserve reserves, a formula for success, no more, no less. Difference is a given, I'm driven, that's my logic. I won't give in, I'd rather live in a world without advanced math.
Fabulous, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say, Amy, I'm sorry that Jonathan's not still here.
Yeah, me
There's
too.
some comments that I want you to check in the chat section, please. Our
Okay.
last reader is Julian. Thank y'all for all being here. And Julian, say something so I can find it. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
You're good.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, I didn't intend to read, but I had a poem. I have a poem that's about the part of North Carolina where Chris lives. Between 1969 and 1972 or 3, I taught English at a branch of North Carolina State that was at Fort Bragg. And I commuted back and forth between Fort Bragg and Durham, where I lived in those days. And this poem is about something that happened to me on the road one night as I was driving home after class. I should say that the classes I taught usually finished up about 10 o'clock. And so I was on my way home after that. This poem is called Zapper. Something grunted in the field towards Lillington. Waking, you learned it was feral hogs. But then, with your butt on the ground, arms and hands inside the VW engine compartment, changing a fan belt, and oh yeah, your head as you jerked and the lid of it cold cocked you. Later, you thought of the bug zapper you passed each night on your way home, triggered into lightning by passing insects, thought how the sound of it split the air, wondered if that sound was the last thought of the electrocuted. Back in the office you shared at Fort Bragg, in your sleeping bag on the floor, you said an Our Father to the young soldier who picked you up. He had volunteered 3 tours in Vietnam, wanted to go back. Did he want to try again to get it right? Was he hooked on the whole violence of it? Violence you couldn't imagine. Or was he playing a grisly game? Russian roulette writ large on the napalm jungles of his memory, and their little people couldn't get the mangled bodies out of his dreams. Dreamed his own mangled body lay on that roadside, legs splayed out under the rear end of that damn Carmen Ghia. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Julian. Well, I'm going to put it back on gallery so we can see each other one more time. Chris, thank you so very much. Thank you, everybody who read. Thank you, everybody who's here. Have a wonderful night. And next week, we do not have a book launch, but we will start back up after April Fool's Day. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Malika.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Well.
Thanks for being here. Good to
Thanks.
see everyone.
Great.